You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
We'll try to slice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood art Ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be looking at Alfred Sisley. Now, before I get started, I want to remind everyone we are entering the fourth round of Arts Madness. It's been really cool to see how many people are voting and weighing in on their favorite artists and artworks every single week. So be sure to check the links in the show notes and vote for your favorite artists in this week's matches at whoartedpodcast.com/arts-madness. Now, on to the actual topic. Alfred Sisley was born October 30th, 1839 in Paris, France. Although he was born in France, Sisley was actually the son of affluent British expats. His father, William, ran a lucrative business exporting silk and artificial flowers. Like many wealthy parents of the era, William Sisley had practical plans for his son. In 1857, at the age of 18, Alfred was sent across the English Channel to London to study commerce and prepare for a career in the family business. But the world of ledgers, trade, and just business in general didn't really appeal to him. Sisley spent the majority of those 4 years in London wandering through the museums, particularly the National Gallery. There, he encountered the magnificent landscapes of British painters like John Constable and J.M.W. Turner. He loved the way they captured the dynamic shifting moods of nature and light. By 1861, Alfred Sisley had basically walked away from business ambitions. He returned to Paris, determined to become a painter. His family was a bit reluctant, but they continued to financially support him. So Sisley enrolled in the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts in 1862. He also joined the studio of the Swiss artist Charles Gleyre, a traditional painter who perhaps unintentionally nurtured some of the greatest rebels in art history, at least for that time period. In Gleyre's studio, Sisley met three young up-and-coming artists equally disillusioned with the traditional methods: Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Frédéric Bazille. The four quickly bonded over their shared frustration of the rigid, old-fashioned rules of the academic art establishment, which heavily favored idealized mythological and historical scenes painted in the studio. The four of them began leaving the studio and painting en plein air, or in open air. They traveled to the forest of Fontainebleau outside of Paris, setting up their easels directly in front of nature. By painting outdoors, they learned to capture the fleeting, immediate effects of sunlight and weather using quick, broken brushstrokes, and this technique was really foundational to what we now know as the Impressionist movement. Throughout the 1860s, Sisley enjoyed a relatively comfortable life. Unlike Monet and Renoir, who often struggled to afford paint or food, Sisley was supported by a generous allowance from his father. During this time, he fell in love with a woman, Marie Lecozec, a florist and model. The two of them had 2 children, and they lived a happy, secure life near the bustling cafes where the Parisian avant-garde gathered to debate art. But Sisley's world, much like a lot of people's, was really turned upside down in 1870 with the Franco-Prussian War. A war takes its toll in many ways, even beyond the battlefield. Many industries suffered. Sisley's father's business completely collapsed. William Sisley lost his fortune and passed away shortly after, leaving Alfred entirely cut off from the financial safety net he had relied on for really his entire life. Suddenly plunged into poverty, Sisley was forced to depend solely on the sale of his paintings to feed his family. He joined his friends in organizing the first Impressionist exhibition in 1874, an independent show meant to bypass the restrictive official Paris Salon. Over the next decade, he participated in several more of these exhibitions, although the public initially didn't really care for their work. I mean, the name Impressionism came from a critic, Louis Vosselet, basically making fun of the work of Monet and the others in the show. Now, as Sisley and the other artists were struggling to gain a foothold in the art scene and really sell their work and make a living, Sisley began to search for cheaper rent outside of Paris. He moved his family to a series of rural villages west of Paris. There, he was able to find a serene world of just gentle rivers, charming bridges, and expansive, dramatic skies, perfect subjects for his art. Among all the original Impressionists, Sisley is often celebrated as the most consistent and dedicated to the movement's core ideals. Monet eventually started to become a bit more abstract, and Renoir returned to classical figure painting, but Sisley was steadfast, devoted to the landscape. He had an incredible gift for painting the sky using delicate, harmonious palettes of blues, pinks, and pale greens to capture the atmosphere with a quiet, poetic grace. Sadly, Sisley never saw the immense success or wealth that his friends later achieved. He struggled financially until he passed away of cancer on January 29th, 1899, at just the age of 59. And it almost seems cliche, but almost immediately after his passing, the art world finally recognized his genius, and today he's remembered as one of the essential founding members of the Impressionist movement. Now, I want to take a moment to look at one of his great works, The Flood at PortMarly. This was painted in 1876. It's oil on canvas, about 24 by 20 inches. So relatively small, but that is important because it was portable and highly practical for an artist who insisted on dragging his canvas, easel, and paints outdoors to capture the scene exactly as it unfolded in front of him. The painting depicts the real-life town of PortMarly, located on the Seine River during a massive spring flood that overflowed the riverbanks and completely submerged the town's streets. On the right side of the canvas, we see a pale yellow building painted with a sign reading "Ah St. Nicholas," a local wine shop. The flooded street has been transformed into a temporary canal where we see locals navigating the water in small wooden skiffs, paddling right up to the front doors of the buildings. I think part of what is amazing about this work is the way it shows Sisley's commitment to that en plein air process, even in the face of a natural disaster. When the Seine burst its banks, most residents likely saw it as a massive inconvenience or even a community tragedy. Sisley, though, saw it as an extraordinary optical event. He set up his easel right at the edge of the encroaching waters and painted a series of 6 canvases documenting the event from different angles and tracking exactly how the light interacted with this sudden mirrored surface covering the town. And for kind of a natural disaster, it feels shockingly calm. Instead of dramatizing the destruction and the panic of floodwaters, Sisley paints the scene with a quiet tranquility. The water is soft, shimmering strokes of silver, blue, and brown, making it look less like a destructive force and more like a gentle, reflective blanket simply smoothed over the rough cobblestones of the street. The floodwater serves as a massive mirror, pulling the expansive, cloud-filled sky down to the earth. Impressionism was largely about capturing that fleeting atmospheric conditions of a specific moment, and water was sort of the ultimate subject for this. Water breaks apart the solid, rigid forms of the buildings and trees into little fragmented reflections. And the cool thing about this reflective nature is it kind of unites the sky and the ground, the heavens and the earth, creating a harmonious blend of light and color that fills the entire composition. There's also a beautiful contrast between the permanence of human architecture and the fluid, unpredictable nature of the environment. The wine shop stands solid, blocky, and geometric against the soft, rippling horizontals of the water and the organic, sweeping branches of bare trees. But there's no conflict with this contrast. Humanity and nature are peacefully coexisting. The figures in the boats aren't fighting against a raging current. They're just adjusting to the new, temporary rhythm of their world. Flood at PortMarly shows the ideals of that Impressionist movement. It proved that a landscape didn't need a grand historical narrative or a romanticized perfect view of nature to be considered a masterpiece. By finding the beauty in a random, sort of natural catastrophe, Sisley elevated the mundane into something magical.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.